The ice cracked like ancient bones splitting under pressure, echoing through the deep borehole drilled into the forgotten glacier. Vapor hissed from punctured tubing as the alien survey team descended, cautious yet eager, down the spiral lift that cut through a kilometer of solid ice. Blue light from their visors flickered across rusted walls and faded insignia, the symbols alien to them but preserved by the cold. Dr. Eckrell's tendrils twitched with excitement as the platform settled onto the icy floor of the hidden chamber. His assistants, Rage and Vok, followed closely, instruments humming in their grip. The structure was buried so deep and shielded so effectively that not even their long-range satellites had caught its energy signature. The only reason they'd found it at all was due to a thermal anomaly, barely a whisper against the glacial silence registered during their geological scan. Now, they stood before a vault, sealed behind what appeared to be a hardened composite alloy. There was no obvious door, no visible locking mechanism. Just a long stretch of angled panels fused into the ice, worn by time but intact. Rage's scanning array buzzed with low-frequency harmonics as it swept across the surface. "Still holding a magnetic containment field," she said, clicking her secondary digits in surprise. "Power levels low but stable. Estimated duration of function, 1,112 Earth years." "A relic," murmured Eckrell, "from the early stellar expansion era, possibly pre-collapse. This could be pre-Union." Vok's voice rasped through the comms. "You think it's human tech?" Eckrell nodded slowly. "Yes. Crude, but not primitive. There's a deliberate design here, controlled cryostasis, reinforced shielding. And..." He pointed to the faint etchings near the base of the vault symbols, nearly erased by time. "Latin script," he said. "They called this place the AEGIS Bioadaptive Initiative." Rage leaned closer, her visor's translation overlay flickering. "That's not standard military or civilian. Bioadaptive? That suggests augmentation?" "Possibly. Or something worse," Eckrell said, voice lowering. "But there's only one way to know." "Peer?" They found an access conduit hidden behind a frost-sealed panel and routed emergency power from their portable core. Lights flickered on one by one, revealing rows of cylindrical cryopods stacked like organ pipes into the wall. Most were shattered, systems had failed, glass fractured, the skeletal remains within long decayed. But one pod still pulsed faintly. "Pod 19. Vitals detected," Vok whispered. "Weak but stable. Subject appears alive." The team went silent. Eckrell tapped into the pod's diagnostics. "Name, Nathan Cole, human male. Age at time of entry, 36. Bio readouts indicate extreme biological modification, muscle mass beyond human averages. Bone density off scale, metabolic irregularities." "Intentional?" Reg asked. "Unclear. There are markers of medical intervention, sutures, implants, grafted tissue, but also signs of systemic stress. He's not just modified, he's been through something." "Should we wake him?" Vok shook his head. "We don't know what he island, if he's dangerous." "He's dying," Reg interrupted. "Pod integrity is failing. If we don't intervene, he's gone in hours." Eckrell hesitated, then issued the command. "Prepare medical containment." Initiating. Thaw. The thawing process was excruciatingly slow. Cryo revival wasn't like in the old mythos. It wasn't just pressing a button and waiting for someone to wake up fresh and coherent. It took hours. Fluids had to circulate again. Neural systems had to reactivate, without inducing seizures or catastrophic inflammation. As the temperature of Pod 19 rose, Nathan's body began twitching involuntarily, his face tightening as cellular repair systems, ancient clunky nanites, crawled sluggishly through his blood. 3 hours in, the glass lid of the pod hissed open. The man inside gasped violently, his eyes wide with terror, limbs flailing weakly. A monitor exploded from a backhanded strike, glass and sparks flying. Eckrell stumbled backward. "Contain him." They flooded the chamber with calming aerosols and injected a sedative through the restraint collar. It took longer than it should have. His metabolism shredded the chemicals at triple the normal rate, but finally his muscles relaxed. Nathan's chest heaved. His skin was pale, mottled with old surgical scars and dermal reinforcements like hardened veins beneath the flesh. Electrodes attached to his temples fed neural data into the translator, but the signal was garbled, his mind still rebooting. Then he spoke. Not words, not yet, just a name. Sarah. Reg looked up. Could be a daughter, wife, memory fragment. Ekril approached slowly. Nathan, can you hear us? His head turned, eyes sharp but lost. He tried to sit, groaned, then collapsed back into the med frame. Where am I? You're safe, Ekril said gently. You've been asleep for a very long time. We're here to help. You're not human. Ekril gave a polite nod. No, we are scholars from the Kexari exploration fleet. You were found in an abandoned facility beneath the ice. I was in Boston. That was approximately 1,000 years ago. Earth as you knew it is gone. Nathan stared up at the ceiling. His breathing grew shallow. Everyone's dead. No one spoke. Even Reg, often clinical to a fault, looked away. They moved him to the medbay aboard their ship. Monitors beeped in low, cautious tones. Scans showed extensive muscle atrophy, but even so, his physical markers were beyond anything in the Kexari database. His bones were laced with carbon lattice structures. His skin held faint electromagnetic shielding properties. His red blood cells carried double the oxygen capacity of standard human baseline. He was built, Reg said, reviewing the scans, not evolved, re-engineered. Vok narrowed his eyes. Why? Ekril pointed to an archive tag in the pod's data core, Project AEGIS. It was experimental. Their goal was adaptation soldiers who could survive anything. Nathan stirred in the med frame, groaning. We'll need to test motor function tomorrow, Reg added. No aggressive stimulation. He's barely metabolizing nutrients. It may take weeks for him to even walk again. But it didn't take weeks. It took 3 days. And on the 4th day, during a mild tremor caused by the glacier's movement, Nathan jolted awake, half delirious. As a drone hovered near to stabilize his bed, he panicked and reached out. The drone crumpled like foil under his grip. The room froze. Nathan blinked at the wreckage in his palm. I didn't mean to. Reg stared in silent horror. That drone was armor-plated, designed for atmospheric entry. Nathan dropped the remains and sat back. His shoulders trembled. I don't understand what I am. Neither did they. But they were beginning to guess. Nathan Cole woke before the lights came on. The medical bay was quiet, save for the soft whirring of the life support systems and the occasional chirp from a monitoring panel. He lay there still, staring at the ceiling, counting the throb of his pulse in his ears. It had been 10 days since they thawed him out. He wasn't used to being awake for this long. The alien medical staff, Ekril and Rage, mostly had explained what they could. Over a millennium had passed. The Aegis program was long gone. Earth's nations had burned themselves down and risen again, only to collapse into silence. Whatever came after was beyond his knowledge, and possibly theirs too. He asked about his family only once. Ekril had answered honestly. Records from that era were fragmented, incomplete. So, Nathan stopped asking. For the first few days, his legs barely worked. His muscles were like water. His balance was wrecked. Reg estimated it would take 3 months for him to walk unaided. Nathan believed her until day 6, when he stood up unaided, and on day 8, when he jogged a full lap around the med bay. They tested his blood again. Nothing made sense. His cells were still sluggish, as though some systems were rebooting at different speeds, but his muscle fibers had already reached near peak performance. More confusing, he wasn't getting stronger. He was remembering how to use the strength he already had. You shouldn't be able to generate this much force, Reg muttered one morning, adjusting her scanning array. It violates metabolic models. Where is the fuel source? Nathan was still catching his breath. He'd just finished a resistance test with metal weights. Rage's highest calibration was 2 metric tons. He'd lifted it once, slowly. Then sat down, heart pounding. I'm still tired after, he said, his voice hoarse. I'm not invincible. No, Ekril said from the corner. But you are something else entirely. The alien team argued constantly now, thinking he couldn't hear them. The voices filtered through walls, faint, distorted, but he caught enough. The Kexari dialects weren't made for subtlety. Some of them believed he was a military asset too dangerous to release. Others thought he was a genetic archive, living proof of a long-lost civilization's science. One researcher even suggested dissecting him. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He kept wondering if he should have stayed frozen. The demonstration wasn't supposed to happen. Nathan had agreed to some tests, mostly passive ones, neural imaging, stress assessments, but he wasn't prepared for what they did on the 16th day. They led him into a wide chamber near the aft of the research vessel. The walls were reinforced with what looked like polished obsidian, though Reg claimed it was a synthetic alloy stronger than titanium. Dozens of drones hovered overhead, their lenses trained on him. "What's going on?" he asked. "Environmental stressor test," Reg said, avoiding his eyes. "We want to see how your body responds to short bursts of simulated combat environments. Low intensity. Nothing harmful." He should have walked out then. Instead, he said nothing as the first drone activated its weapon, a thin beam of concentrated plasma. It struck his shoulder before he could react. The heat was blinding, the pain worse. He collapsed, clutching his arm. The burn blistered instantly, skin crackling at the edges. But within seconds, the inflammation stopped spreading. Tissue began knitting itself closed, like time-lapse footage played in real life. He blinked at it. "You said non-lethal," he growled. Rage's voice came through the comm, shaken. "It was. That blast is rated to disable armored hostiles." Ekrel stepped forward. "Nathan, please understand. You consented to stress tests. We needed to calibrate your resistance thresholds. I'm not a lab rat," he said, teeth clenched. "Don't do that again." He walked out of the chamber, alone. Later that night, when he was sure no one was watching, he stripped in front of the mirror in his cabin. His body was crisscrossed with faint scars, old surgical cuts, dermal seams from grafted plating, and something else. On his left ribcage, hidden under overlapping muscles, he found a tiny inscription burned into the skin. Aegis 019. Primary Protocol. Containment. He stared at it for a long time. Was that what he had been? A weapon even his own people feared? They kept their distance after that. Rage ran scans silently. Ekrel made quiet notes, but asked no questions. Even Vok, who usually filled the silence with questions about Earth culture, said nothing. So Nathan started talking. He told them about the ocean, about salt on the air, about the way Boston's skyline looked in the late summer haze. He described sour coffee and fried eggs at roadside diners. He told them what a dog was. Ekrel, to his credit, listened intently. "Your species cherished simplicity." "No," Nathan said. "We missed it. Even when we had it, we forgot to enjoy it." "And when the war came?" Nathan didn't answer right away. "When the war came," he said finally, "we got desperate. We built things like me." "Things?" Reg asked. "I was a volunteer. Sort of. We signed waivers, promised to serve the greater good. They didn't tell us how much we'd change." "You remember the procedure?" "Pieces," he said. "They broke us down, one layer at a time. Muscle stripping, bone grafts, neural conditioning. I remember not sleeping for 5 days. They said if we stayed awake long enough, the brain would adapt." "And did it?" Nathan met her gaze. "Sort of. I forgot how to sleep." That silenced the room again. On the 24th day, disaster struck. An asteroid fragment unmapped and traveling at near relativistic speed pierced the vessel's aft hull. The alarms shrieked in every language. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but a fuel line was severed, and fire suppression systems failed in the secondary engine bay. A crew of 5 was trapped behind a jammed pressure bulkhead. Emergency responders were 20 minutes away too long. Nathan didn't hesitate. He ran barefoot through the corridor, past shouting crew, past the fire, smoke filling his lungs. He reached the bulkhead. It was warped, sealed at the edges by emergency foam. No mechanical override. He planted his hands on the alloy. Pain erupted through his healing shoulder, but he pushed. The metal groaned, then screamed. And then it gave way. He pulled the entire bulkhead open, just enough for the trapped crew to crawl out. One by one, coughing and burned, they staggered to safety. The last one hesitated. "You'll die in there," the alien shouted. But Nathan was already dragging an emergency oxygen tank toward the fire. A coolant pipe had ruptured. He remembered enough engineering to know that if the heat reached the secondary manifold, the explosion would tear the rear third of the ship off. He didn't make it back out before the system exploded. The shock wave hurled him into a support beam. His ribs cracked. He couldn't stand. The fire suppression finally kicked in, dousing the bay in heavy foam. Reg found him 6 minutes later. Unconscious. Burned. Breathing shallow. She didn't speak for a long time as she patched the broken ribs and laced dermal grafts across his back. He didn't wake for 13 hours. When he did, he was coughing. "Did it work?" he asked. "You saved them," Reg said quietly. "The entire section. The explosion was contained." Nathan closed his eyes. "Good." Ekrel called a meeting 2 days later. The crew assembled in the central observatory, stars rotating silently overhead. Nathan sat near the back, still stiff from the burns. "He is not a weapon," Ekrel said simply. "He's not a tool. He is a survivor." There were murmurs of agreement, and some of dissent. "He is also dangerous," one alien said. "What happens when he breaks again?" "Then we treat him as we would one of our own," Ekrel replied. "With care, with understanding." T. Nathan didn't speak. He didn't know if he agreed. Later, in his cabin, he stared out at the stars. So much had been lost. But maybe not everything. Nathan moved slowly now, not from injury, but from caution. Recovery wasn't linear. The damage he took in the engine bay hadn't killed him, but it broke several ribs and collapsed a lung. The internal bleeding alone took days to stabilize, and his regeneration was far from instantaneous. Reg estimated 3 weeks before the lung could fully re-expand without risk of secondary rupture. "You should rest," she reminded him regularly. "I am resting," he'd reply from the ship's gym, slowly curling a gravity-resistant bar that warped the reinforced floor beneath his feet. He hated lying down, hated being still. Pain was easier to manage than silence. They'd moved him to quarters deeper inside the vessel now, farther from critical systems. Not for containment at least, not officially, but for quiet. The new quarters were larger, with a filtration wall, adjustable gravity settings, and even a replicated Earth-style shower, courtesy of Vox's attempts at cultural enrichment. The first time Nathan turned it on, he just stood there under the water for 15 minutes, without moving. The second time, he cried. They started asking him to teach. It began as a request for tactical insight, what human warfare looked like, how strategy had evolved. But Nathan didn't remember much about tactics. He remembered exhaustion, field testing, red skies above bombed cities. He remembered noise. Still, he tried. He drew maps from memory on touch displays, explained what Overwatch meant, what trench rotations were, what heat signatures could and couldn't tell you. The Kexari learned quickly, absorbing every word, and soon the sessions shifted. They wanted stories. He gave them what he could. Not war stories, those were too heavy, but the small things. He described baseball, public transportation, first dates. He taught them about pizza, which they tried to replicate with limited success. Ekrel grew especially fond of the word crust. In return, they showed him fragments of their history, images from the early Kexari expansion, awkward moments of first contact with other species, art composed entirely of sound frequencies that tickled the back of Nathan's skull in ways he couldn't describe. There were a dozen species on the ship, some bipedal, some not. Some couldn't be in the same room with others due to atmospheric incompatibility, yet they shared data, laughter, ideas. It was, by all appearances, peaceful. Nathan found himself resenting it. Not because it was wrong, but because it felt like something his own people never got to reach. They'd fought too long, adapted too fast. The peace they wanted had been buried beneath the bodies of their own progress. The first time he stepped outside the vessel was under heavy supervision. They'd landed the ship on a barren moon orbiting a gas giant, no atmosphere, gravity at 0.7 Earth normal, safe, controlled, and more importantly isolated. Ekrel called it mobility reconditioning. Nathan called it stretching his legs. He walked carefully, suit pressurized, readings streaming into the ship's monitoring banks. His joints still ached from the internal bruising, and his balance remained awkward. The enhanced tendons in his legs hadn't fully resynced with his nervous system, and the result was a limp more frustrating than painful. But he didn't fall. By the third excursion, he could run again. Not far, not fast, but enough. Reg monitored everything. His oxygen intake, his caloric usage, how quickly he fatigued. "He's normalizing," she reported. "Slowly, but definitely. Power efficiency is rising. Adaptation curves suggest his enhancements were meant to evolve post-activation." "You mean he was designed to change after being deployed?" Ekrel asked. "Yes," Reg said. "He's not just surviving stasis, he's building on it." Nathan hated hearing that. He didn't want to be evolving, he wanted to be recovering. He wanted to go home. But there was no home left. The next threat didn't come from outside, it came from within. 32 days after awakening, one of the Kexari scientists, Soket, attempted to breach the vault where Nathan's cryopod had been stored. He was acting alone, without clearance, and armed. Reg was the one who caught him, barely avoiding a plasma discharge meant to short out the vault's data core. When questioned, Soket didn't deny his actions. "He's too valuable," the scientist said coldly. "We can't waste this chance. We're sitting on technology our species has never seen before. We can rebuild our military doctrine, reconfigure our biology." "He's not a blueprint," Reg interrupted. "He's an opportunity," Soket snapped. "You want to humanize him, but look at the record. They built him to outlive war. He is war." Nathan listened to the recordings later, jaw tight, fingers curled. When Soket was removed from the vessel and sent back to the Kexari Scientific Authority, the crew went silent for a full day. No work, no scans, no lectures, just stillness. Vok came by Nathan's quarters that night. "Would you have hurt him?" the alien asked. "No," Nathan said, "but I understand why he's afraid." "Afraid? I'm something made to survive the worst things. If I can survive what destroys others, it means I belong in destruction." That's what he sees. "And what do you see?" Nathan took a long time to answer. "Someone who didn't get a choice." Week 6. The ship received a distress call from a nearby freighter. Gravity well malfunctioned near a decaying orbit station. The station had drifted too close to a neutron star's gravitational influence. One of their research modules had broken off, spiraling uncontrollably. The Kexari ship adjusted course. No one asked Nathan to help, but he suited up anyway. The exterior operation required stabilizing the drifting module's course and manually correcting a series of failed thruster nozzles. It was supposed to be simple. Then, the second fragment sheared off. 3 Kexari were caught in the blast vector, spinning away from the module. Nathan, already magnetized to the hull, reacted without thinking. He unlatched, launched himself across the debris field, using nothing but the force of a pushed support beam, and intercepted the nearest scientist mid-drift. The collision should have cracked his ribs again. Instead, he anchored himself to her suit with one arm and redirected their spin by kicking off a rotating panel. The second and third scientists were harder. He caught them by chaining motion, grabbing a passing antenna, and flinging himself toward them. His oxygen was at critical by the time the retrieval crew reached them. 3 lives saved. And a hairline fracture in his right femur from the impact. "That's not even the scary part," Rage said later, reviewing the footage. "You shouldn't have been able to catch them. Your timing was too exact. You calculated a moving trajectory in open space, in real time, without a nav feed." "I didn't calculate," Nathan said. "I guessed." She stared at him. "That's impossible." "No," he said, "it's human." A month after the rescue, Ekrel asked him the question. "Do you want to leave?" Nathan looked up from the digital notebook he'd been sketching in Earth animals, as best as he could recall them. "Leave? Leave? We can send you to a neutral world, quiet, self-sufficient. No more tests, no more monitoring." Nathan set the stylus down. "I don't know," he said. "I don't know who I am without all of this, and I don't know who I'd be on a quiet world either." "You're not a soldier anymore." "No," Nathan agreed, "but I don't think I ever was." Ekrel nodded. "Then maybe you are something new." That night, Nathan stood alone in the ship's observation deck, staring at a gas giant that had no name. He flexed his fingers. They no longer shook. His legs no longer ached. His body, for all its burdens, felt like it finally belonged to him again. He wasn't healed. Not fully. Some things wouldn't ever heal. But he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was adapting. And for the first time since he opened his eyes in that cold pod, Nathan Cole didn't feel like a relic. He felt possible. The station orbited a sunless planet, blacker than vacuum. A Kexari outpost built into the shell of a long dead starship. It was little more than a fortified research node, but its position was crucial. On the edge of neutral territory, beyond which the Volthari Union held space. The Volthari weren't enemies, exactly, but they weren't allies either. Their diplomacy fluctuated with their solar cycles. Nathan had been there 3 days, accompanying Ekrel's delegation. It was a simple escort: observe, stay quiet, stay polite. He wore a reinforced exosuit, not for combat, but because his internal system still hadn't fully adapted to extended exposure in higher radiation zones. The station used minimal shielding. He didn't mind. The suit made him feel contained. The trouble started on day 4. A Volthari transport arrived early, unannounced. Its escort ships took up aggressive positions. The station's defense grid powered on. Weapons were not fired, but everything about the atmosphere shifted. Voices were clipped. Movement slowed. Then the message came. A Kexari scientist, Rage, was missing. Last seen near the Volthari docking area. Hostage situation? Nathan asked, fingers flexing against the inside of his gloves. Unknown, Ekrel said. But the Volthari have sealed their deck and are refusing search access. They claim diplomatic immunity. Then they're hiding something. I agree, Ekrel said, voice low. But this is a delicate edge. One wrong step, and we trigger open conflict. Nathan looked toward the sealed corridor. Let me be the step. The suit wasn't powered armor. No weapons, no servos, just environmental stabilization and impact resistance. But it fit him like skin, tailored after weeks of scans. He moved quickly and silently through maintenance shafts, following Rage's biosignature as best he could from triangulated pings sent before her signal went dark. Volthari tech scrambled normal scans, so he tracked pressure variations, thermal echoes, and the way silence pressed harder in one corridor than another. When he found her, she was bound to a magnetic panel unconscious, bruised, breathing shallow. A Volthari guard, armored in jagged kinetic plating, stood nearby with an arc lance in hand. The lance hummed as Nathan stepped into view. Release her. The alien tilted its head. Human, you are a guest here. Do not force a legacy of your kind to begin with blood. Nathan took one step closer. I'm not here for legacy. I'm here for her. The guard lunged. The lance swept fast, but not fast enough. Nathan twisted, letting the blow glance off his suit's shoulder. It tore a gash in the polymer, and pain flared beneath as metal kissed bone, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the alien's wrist, twisted hard, and drove a knee into the side of its armor. The plating cracked. The second strike crumpled it. The third sent the guard to the floor, gasping through a shattered mask. Nathan caught his breath, then turned to Reg. Her pulse was thready. He lifted her gently, ignoring the sharp stab of his bruised ribs. Getting out was harder. By the time he reached the central corridor, 3 more Volthari stood waiting. They didn't speak. They opened fire. Pulse rounds struck his chest, lighting up the pain circuits in his suit. He stumbled, legs sliding, vision narrowing. One shot clipped his jaw, his head snapped sideways. For a moment, everything went white. But he didn't fall. Instead, he turned toward the nearest attacker and charged. There was no grace, no technique. Just force. The corridor filled with screams and shouts, weapons flying. He kept moving, shielding Reg with his own body as he crashed through them, absorbing punishment with every step. Bones fractured. Muscles tore. But his grip never faltered. Behind him, alarms began to wail. The Kexari had seen the breach. By the time he reached friendly lines, he was half-conscious and still standing. Reg survived. So did he. But barely. The medical recovery took over a month. 2 broken ribs again. Torn ligaments in his left shoulder. a fractured orbital socket, mild internal bleeding, burned skin over 20% of his chest from energy discharge. He refused to be placed in cryo again. "I'll heal the long way," he said through gritted teeth. He spent most of the first week barely able to sit up. Muscle wasting hit fast after extended immobilization, and though his body fought it, there were limits. Real limits. Ekril visited often. "She's recovering," the alien said one day, nodding toward the med ward where Rage lay. "She asked about you." "She's not blaming me?" She said, "You're an idiot." Nathan coughed a weak laugh. "Fair. But a brave one," Ekril added. "The Volthari withdrew. No war, no retaliation. But we made our point." "Let me guess, my body made that point." Ekril didn't answer right away. "No," he said eventually. "It was your choice, not your strength. That's what they remember." Weeks passed. Nathan walked again. Then trained, slowly, carefully. No more tests, no more simulations. Just motion, balance, breathing. He kept the suit, even after it was patched and redesigned. Not because he needed it. Because it reminded him of restraint. A quiet reminder that strength wasn't about what you could do, but what you chose not to. The Kexari Council offered him options: stay on as an observer, join their exploratory fleet, even return to Earth's ruins, now a museum world under conservation law. He declined. Instead, he requested a role. One ship, one crew. Search and rescue. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a relic. He could be something new. 3 months after his last injury, he stood aboard the Alaran Dawn, a deep-range survey vessel retrofitted for disaster relief. As it coasted through a binary system surrounded by unstable asteroid rings, Nathan stood at the observation deck. Reg joined him quietly. "Back in one piece?" she asked. He rolled his shoulder. It still ached. "Mostly. You know, there are still some who think you're dangerous." He nodded. "I probably am. But I'm not built to break anymore," he said. "Not the way I used to be." She leaned against the railing beside him. "I read the AEGIS logs," she said. "The ones we salvaged from the vault. You weren't designed to fight wars." "No?" "No, you were part of the second wave of experiments, the adaptation units." He looked over at her. "What does that mean?" "It means they built you not just to survive combat but to survive peace." Nathan turned that over in his head. Then, slowly, he smiled. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. And for the first time, in over 1,000 years, Nathan Cole wasn't looking backward. He was moving forward.